My friend Mr. Roberts was going to deal with the witness, and my lord, he has selected the passages quite shortly from the statement, which will be read.
Yes. Witness, will you stand up, please? What is your name?
Max Wielens.
Max Wielens, you made 2 statements in London to Colonel Hinchley Cook.
Jawohl.
And are these photostats of the 2 statements? The first one dated the 26th of August, 1945, and the second dated the 6th of September, 1945. Are those the photographs of your 2 statements? Just look at them to identify them. You can see your signature at the end of each.
Jawohl.
There. And in those 2 statements, did you tell the truth?
Habe ich die Wahrheit gesagt?
My lord, perhaps I should now read some passages so that they go into the record. The statement, if you take the first statement first, the statement begins with your names and the positions which you held
Vom 6. Von wann?
in the SS and in the criminal police. That's right, isn't it? Well, now, will you just follow the beginning of the statement?
Von welcher Erklärung? Vom 6.9.
Well, I say the first one.
Die erste, jawohl.
Well, now, just follow it while I read. I'll read the whole of the first page. Oberregierungs- und Kriminalrat, SS, Obersturmbannführer.
Oberregierungs- und Kriminalrat der Kriminalpolizei, nicht der SS.
Yes, I don't want you to read it if you'll just listen to me. And formerly officer in charge of the criminal police at Breslau. I have to state, in answer to the question, whether I know anything about the shooting of English prisoners of war, Air Force officers of the prison camp at Sagan, that I have knowledge of this matter and wish to make the following statement without reserve. The shooting took place on the express personal orders of the former Führer, was carried out by the Gestapo. The officer in charge of the Staatspolizei Leitstelle at Breslau was Oberregierungsrat Dr. Scharpwinkel. His immediate superiors were Chief of the SIPO, Dr. Kaltenbrunner, and Chief of Amt 4 of RSHA, SS Gruppenführer Müller. I am unable to give the names of the officers in charge of other districts of the Gestapo who carried out shootings in their districts. I insert here a small chart showing the organization of the SIPO. I now go to the bottom of page 2 in the English copy, and it's the bottom of page 3 in the copy which the witness has in his hands in German. During the course of time, this is talking about Stalag Luft III, 99 escape tunnels had been dug. All of them had been discovered by the military. The 100th tunnel, dug in March 1944, proved successful to the extent that 80 officers were able to escape. On receipt of a telephone message from the camp headquarters to the criminal police, I gave order for the Kriegsfahndung in accordance with the emergency instructions laid down. At Dr. Absalom's suggestion, having regard to the time lag, Grossfahndung was ordered. Moreover, the officer in charge of the Reichskriminalpolizeiamt had to be informed. He approved and confirmed the order for the gross alarm. Gradually, the search, which was carried out in all parts of Germany, led to the rearrest of practically all the escaped English officer prisoners, with the exception of 3, I believe. Most of them were recaptured while still in Silesia. A few had got as far as Kiel, Strasbourg, and the Allgäu. It was then that one day at noon, I received a telegraphic instruction from General Neber to proceed at once to Berlin to be informed of a secret order. When I arrived in Berlin that evening, I saw General Neber in his office. I gave him a short, concise report on the whole matter. He then showed me a teleprint order signed by Dr. Kaltenbrunner, in which it was stated that on the express personal orders of the Führer, over half of the officers escaped from Sagan were to be shot after their recapture. The officer in charge, Department 4, Gruppenführer Müller, had received corresponding orders and would give instructions to the Staatspolizei. Military officers had been informed. General Neber himself appeared shocked at this order. He was very distressed. I was afterwards told that for nights on end he had not gone to bed. I, too, was appalled at the horrible step to be taken and opposed its execution. I said that it was against the laws of war, that it was bound to lead to reprisals against our own officers, who were prisoners of war in English camps, and that I absolutely refused to take any responsibility. General Neber replied that in this particular case, I had indeed no responsibility whatever, because the Staatspolizei would act completely independently, and that after all, the Führer's orders had to be carried out without demur. I want to point out that when I first refused, I acted on impulse and feeling, well knowing that I could not hope to prevail in view of the conditions that had recently arisen within the SIPO. Neber then added that I, on my part, was of course under an obligation to preserve absolute secrecy, and that I had been shown the original order so that I should not make any difficulties vis-à-vis the Staatspolizei. My own duties as regards the transport of some of the prisoners would be transferred to the Staatspolizei. In this connection, I want to explain that until then, the bringing back of prisoners to the camp had been the responsibility of the Kripo. Either they had to take them back to the camp themselves, or they had to hold them until they were fetched by the camp staff. In answer to a question, I declared that Dr. Schulze was present. I declare that Dr. Schulze was present at the discussion with General Neber. He nodded his head in agreement when I raised my objection, otherwise took no part. On my return to Breslau, I learned from Dr. Scharpwinkel that the Gestapo had been duly informed by Gruppenführer Müller. I was not apprised of the actual instructions. I also don't know whether a similar order was issued to every officer in charge Staatspolizei Leitstellen, or whether orders were only given to those in whose arrests had been made and executions were to be carried out. According to instructions, the police in the districts where arrests had been made had to inform the Reichskripo-Amt by telegram or telephone that officer prisoners of war had been taken into custody. The Kripo-Leitstelle Breslau was also to be informed. How the shooting was carried out, I do not know, but I presume that after Staatspolizei had collected the officers concerned from the prisons, they were shot in some remote spot, forest, etc., with service pistols of the Gestapo. In answer to the question whether the officers were possibly beaten to death, I state that I do not believe this because the Führer's order specifically mentioned shooting. The Staatspolizei had, in accordance with instructions received from RSHA, Department 4, described the shooting as if it had occurred in transit for the purpose of self-defense or to prevent re-escape. This I afterwards learned from Dr. Scharpwinkel. Later, the Kripo-Leitstelle at Breslau received a letter from RSHA Department 5, which had to be communicated to the camp commandant with a request that its text should be made known to the English officer prisoners of war in order to frighten them. The letter explained that the shooting had occurred for the above-mentioned reasons. The text of the letter was communicated to Oberst Lindiner, or one of the camp's staff officers. As regards the selection of officers to be shot, a list had been prepared by the camp authorities at the request of Department 5, in which those officers who were regarded as disturbing elements, plotters, and escape leaders had been specifically mentioned. The names were selected either by the commandant or by one of his officers. Thereupon, the shooting of officers mentioned by name was accordingly ordered by Department 4, and corresponding instructions sent to the Staatspolizei of the district concerned. I omit the next paragraph, and I go to the bottom of the English copy, page 4, the bottom of the witness's copy, page 7. Witness, would you turn to page 7, please? And you'll find a passage marked in pencil at the bottom of page 7. Have you got page 7? Have you got page 7,
Ja,
Witness?
Seite 7.
I carefully numbered the pages.
Ja, das ist hier nichts angezeichnet.
I know. Well, if you turn over the page, then you'll get something which is marked.
Ist hier nichts angezeichnet auf Seite 7. Auf Seite 8.
Well, you'll find something marked at the very bottom of page 7. Very bottom. At any rate, just follow these
Right.
words. Follow these words, will you? To revert to the shooting.
Ja?
Approximately...
Ja?
Right,
Ja?
right.
Und?
Approximately 40 English officers who had not been arrested by the Staatspolizei, but by the Kripo, had meanwhile been taken back to camp. When you said that, you'll just answer this question, witness. When you said approximately 40 officers, you didn't know the actual numbers, did you?
Die Zahl stimmt nicht, es sind nicht 40 gewesen. Da habe ich mich damals geirrt.
That's right. That's right, that's right. Because it isn't a correct number. It's, I think 15.
Nein,
Uh,
da habe ich mich damals geirrt.
that's right. They had come to no harm whatsoever. I
Von
must
der-
assume that their
Von der
treatment...
Kriminalpolizei sind ungefähr 15 zurückgeführt worden.
Yes, yes. But I just want now you to listen, if you'll be kind enough. I must assume their treatment was perfectly correct. It had been impossible to avoid putting them into police prisons due to the general conditions then prevailing. I do not know who interrogated the officers in the police prisons. I assume this was done by the local police authorities, as an interrogation must necessarily follow every notification of arrest. I do not know the names of the officials.
Eine Vernehmung.
Hmm?
Eine Vernehmung zu folgen hat.
Yes. I do not know the names of the officials of the Staatspolizei or the Gemeindepolizei, a small local police force, who cooperated in this matter. Dr. Absalom would be able to supply the answer to this question.
Go on, can't you, to the paragraph beginning of the urns, at any rate?
If your lordship pleases. The urns containing the ashes of the officers who had been shot were transmitted by the Staatspolizei to the criminal polizei. Which crematoria had been used by the Staatspolizei, I'm unable to say. The urns were handed over to the camp commandant by the order of RSHA for a military funeral. By this means, the return of the urns through the Kripo, the fact that the Staatspolizei was connected with the matter, was to be camouflaged. Then I miss the next paragraph. Then I read one sentence, the next line. I do not know why 5 officers were interrogated in Berlin. And then, my lord, I turn to page 6. And witness, would you go to the bottom of your page 10? The bottom of your page 10. You just turn over the page in the ordinary way. Lord, I take the middle paragraph, just 2 paragraphs out of page 6. In a general way, it may be of interest that even before my departure for Berlin, Criminal Commissar Dr. Absalom had told me that he had heard in Camp Sagan, he was told this in a very secretive way, that shootings were to take place in order to deter officers. From this it may be deduced the fact that the camp had already been informed through military channels of the order to shoot issued by Dr. Kaltenbrunner. It would be useful to ascertain what Goering knows about the whole affair, because of Führer must surely have informed him of the order, since it concerned a camp of the Luftwaffe. Lord, that's all of that statement that I think I need read. Well, Lord, I'm anxious to avoid reading as much of the second statement as I possibly can, because there's a good deal of repetition. You take the second, will you take the second statement now, witness? That one, I'm afraid, has not been marked. The third paragraph, my lord, third and fourth paragraphs on the first page of the statement. As to when the Staatspolizei had begun with the shootings, I'm not in a position to say. But I imagine it happened when only very few prisoners were still at large and their capture could no longer be reckoned with. As regards the lapse of time between the order for gross Fahndung and being shown the orders for the shootings, this could only have been a matter of a few days. I can no longer recall exact dates. I do know, however, for certain that no shootings had taken place anywhere at the time when the order was shown to me. Then perhaps I could read the last paragraph but one on that page. Before the last mass escape had taken place, I'd heard nothing about the prospect of more drastic measures to be taken against the prisoners. I heard of it only after the final escape, but before I had been shown in Berlin the order for the shootings. It was then that Dr. Absalom had told me that he had heard in Sagan camp, from whom I do not know, although I believe it was from Oberst Lindiner, that in future shootings would take place. When this particular order was shown to me in Berlin, it appeared to me to be merely a proof that the military were behind this brutal measure, or at least had had knowledge of it before the RSHA. As regards the expression, more than half, in the order of Dr. Kaltenbrunner, this is how the wording is fixed in my mind. However, it is quite possible that a specific number was given, and that I, in quickly glancing through the order, interpreted it thus in my mind, but that is more than half. Lord, perhaps I might read, omitting the first several paragraphs, which are really repetitious, a paragraph just a little more than halfway down the page. I do not know how the Gestapo took over from the local police prisons those officers who were to be shot. Begins, I do not know. I do not know how the Gestapo took over from the local police prisons those officers who were to be shot. It is, however, possible that the Gestapo got in touch with the Kripo. In Lower Silesia, the firing squads were detailed by the officer in charge of the Staatspolizei, Dr. Scharpwinkel, or by his orders. I never heard who belonged to these squads. Then the last paragraph on that page, I declare in answer to the question as to why the Kripo did not carry out the shooting, that in the execution of its duties, the Kripo felt themselves bound by the provisions of the Strafprozessordnung and the Reichsstrafgesetzbuch, and that their personnel were trained in accordance with these standards. On the other hand, during the war, the Staatspolizei had, incited by Himmler, become less scrupulous. They carried out executions on the orders of the RSHA, or with the approval of that department whenever required. That is the reason why German citizens the German citizens' general detestation of the Staatspolizei did not extend to the Kripo. The urns were obviously returned to the Kripo for the sole reason that the invention of the Staatspolizei should not become publicly known, i.e., the English officers in camp should not become aware of it. My Lord, I think that's all I need, really.